On a sun-bleached ranch, leather met air with a sharp crack on the sun-baked dirt, but the sting never came. Elijah stood trembling, eyes clenched shut as his stepmother's belt hovered like a vulture ready to strike. The world held its breath until a heavy paw whispered across the ground and an ancient nine appeared, fur silvered by age, muzzle lifted defiantly. Still as granite, he planted himself between child and tormentor, growling with the weight of unspoken truth. In that suspended moment, Elijah dared to blink. What follows will uncover a silent protector's courtroom roar. Max awoke before dawn on the chilly morning of his first day in retirement. The barracks were quiet, except for the occasional soft clink of a leash being secured in its hook. His joints protested as he stretched on the cold concrete floor, memories of miles patrolled and hearts defended pulsing through every muscle fibre. He nosed at the empty food bowl, its absence a reminder the uniform days were over and a new routine awaited him. One that smelled of stillness rather than sirens. Yet instinct throbbing in his veins told him peace was an illusion. Today he would prove that even a silent guardian could still stand watch. A distant whimper drifted on the morning wind as Max's handler, Mariana, clipped his leash on and led him towards the patrol vehicle. She was polite and professional, her clipboard clutched against her side like a shield, her eyes compassionate but resolute. Max paused at the open door, ears pricked, paper rustled in Mariana's hand, but his attention was drawn beyond the windshield to a narrow dirt road flanked by wind-swept grasses. Each tremor in the air spoke in a language only his worn nose and weathered heart understood. Danger, fear, injustice. Without a word, he stepped inside the vehicle, ready for whatever lay beyond the next turn. The ranch appeared deceptively calm, its whitewashed fence posts gleaming under the rising sun. Flower beds bordered the front porch in neat rows, but every petal held a weight of neglect. The gate creaked as Max and Mariana entered, the sound echoing like a warning bell. Max hesitated at the threshold, every hair on his spine lifting. Inside, shadows pulled in corners where light would not dare vent. Children's laughter drifted weakly from a distant barn rather than the main house, and a hush settled over the property like a wet blanket. Max's paw tapped the earth anxiously. He would not ignore what he felt. Near the back fence, Elijah labored to drag a bucket of oats across the parched earth, his shirt torn and smeared with dust. Each step was an effort, his body small against the weight of the burden, and the burdens unseen. A trembling cough escaped his lips as he paused to wipe a trickle of blood from his split lip. Max approached in silence, paws barely stirring the loose soil. When Elijah's gaze met the dog's, a flicker of recognition flashed in the boy's glassy eyes. Not pity, not fear, but an unspoken bond. In that instant, Elijah felt seen for the first time. Inside the house, Delilah raised her voice again, venom threading through every syllable. "Useless little stray," she hissed, her nails clicking against the banister. The belt whipped through the air, leather promising pain. Max's ears flattened and his growl vibrated from deep within his chest, a rumble that shook the air around them. Time slowed. The belt met empty space. Only then did Elijah's eyes snap open, the ghost of a tear carving a path down his dusty cheek. Max stood firm, a living bulwark against cruelty. Delilah froze, lips parting as if her voice had lodged in her throat. Mariana arrived at the scene moments later, summoned by a neighbor's hurried call. She found Max guarding Elijah like a knight of old, and the boy's trembling hand reaching out to stroke the dog's matted fur. Elijah, her mind corrected, her heart hammering with concern. When Delilah locked the door behind her, scowling and brushing invisible dirt from her gloves, Max refused to move. Mariana's presence calmed him. She clipped on his leash, but he remained rooted, eyes never leaving the frightened child. The investigation moved swiftly. At the welfare office, a series of hushed conversations unfolded while Max waited patiently, head resting on his paws. His thick coat carried the scent of dust and fear, and each breath spoke volumes of the truth he bore witness to. Notes were taken, statements recorded, but in the sterile hush of the interrogation room, it was Max's steady gaze that spoke loudest. When officials viewed Elijah's bruised sketches, a small figure cowering in a corner, a looming hand brandishing a belt, and a dog positioned like a sentinel, the pieces clicked into a painful puzzle. In the courtroom, Max sat beside Mariana, his muzzle streaked with silver and eyes clouded but unwavering. The judge's gavel resonated through the hushed chamber, followed by the clicking of shoes on polished wood. Witnesses recounted events with stilted formality, but it was Elijah's drawings that cut through the layers of legalese. One by one, the judge examined each childlike sketch as though reading the diary of a wounded soul. At the close of proceedings, Elijah rose, voice quivering like dry leaves in a storm. He spoke of the day Max stepped between him and fear, of how the dog's silent solidarity was worth more than any shout of rescue. "She never saw me," he whispered, but Max did. Delilah's face paled as custody slipped from her grasp. The final verdict echoed in the chamber. Elijah would be placed in a safe home by the rolling hills beyond the creek, under the care of a gentle foster mother who believed in bedtime stories and starlit lullabies. Mariana crouched to untie Max's leash, and for the first time Max hesitated, then bounded forward, pads skidding on polished floorboards to stand by Elijah's side. No bureaucrat questioned the dog's attachment. In their eyes, Max was more than a witness, he was a lifeline. Say was a lifeline. As they drove away from the courthouse, the world outside the car window looked new, hills undulating like green waves, wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Elijah pressed his forehead against the glass, his breathing steady for once. Max sprawled across the back seat, head resting on the boy's lap, each exhale a promise of protection. The sun climbed higher, bathing them in warmth neither had ever known. Months later, Elijah sat at a small wooden table in his new home, crayons scattered like confetti. He pressed them to paper and drew again, this time sketching a boy strolling through fields of daisies beneath a sky brushed with hope. A dog walked beside him, tail mid-wag, ears perked in curiosity. When he finished, he slid the drawing across to Mariana, now his steadfast friend, and whispered, "This is a place where I don't have to be afraid to exist." Max, older and slower, lifted his head and offered a single gentle wag. That was enough. Not every rescue begins with sirens. Sometimes it unfolds in the hush before dawn, in the soft sigh of a dog's paws on dust, in the unspoken vow to stand guard over the most vulnerable. Max may have left the force, but he never left his purpose. By choosing to stay, he taught a frightened child that courage can be quiet and loyalty can speak louder than words, and in that silent partnership, both found a reason to believe in tomorrow. Years drifted by like sunbeams shifting across the kitchen floor, and Elijah grew stronger with each passing season. He learned to read by Max's side, tracing letters with a finger that once trembled with fear. On warm afternoons, they wandered the hills together, Elijah's laughter echoing through wildflower fields as Max's tail carved rhythmic patterns in the tall grass. Became a place of curiosity rather than dread. Elijah discovered the thrill of solving equations and the comfort of friends who greeted him with smiles instead of scorn. Each night, Max lay curled at the foot of his bed, guarding dreams rather than warding off nightmares. When Max finally slowed beneath the weight of time, Elijah refused to let him wander alone into old age. He built a soft bed by the window of their new home, lining it with blankets scented by lavender and sunshine. Together they watched storms roll in over distant peaks, sharing the hush of approaching rain. On what would be Max's last evening, Elijah whispered thanks for every silent vigil, every heartbeat of protection that had saved him. Max's eyes closed with a sigh that resonated in Elijah's chest, and though the world dimmed in that moment, Elijah carried forward the light of one steadfast companion. Years later, standing before a gathering at an animal shelter, Elijah told Max's story to volunteers and foster families, urging them to listen for the quiet voices begging for rescue. He spoke of loyalty that needs no words, of courage born in stillness, and of the extraordinary bond between a boy once broken and a dog whose only demand was to stay. And as applause rose around him, Elijah felt Max's presence in every hopeful tail wag outside the windows, proof that sometimes the greatest rescues unfold without sirens, only the softest steps of a true friend.